Most opposite. White and black. Yeah, white and black. There you go. 15 seconds. I need good answers. All right, 3, 2, 1. You are Dunzo. Morales, what do you guys come up with? Yeah, light and dark, that works. Right? If it's dark, there's no light. If it's light, there's no dark. Reasonable. Brenda. Skinny and fat. Yeah, right? You can't be skinny fat. You can be a little chubby. But you can't be both. That's reasonable. That's reasonable. Talk to me please, Mel's. Black and white, yin and yang. Good, that's a good one. That's a good one, I like that. Kevin Scott. Boy and girl, in some ways, absolutely. Mungia. Mungia, what do you guys talk about?
We're gonna perform.
No, you're not.
About the song from Katy Perry where it says hot in your coat.
I don't know why you guys aren't performing it then. Hot, yeah, but that's a good one, hot and cold. Right? It's impossible to be hot and cold. Isis. Because none of you have landed where I want you to land yet. Talk to me. Fire and ice. That's a good one. What? What about dry ice? It's hot. What? Wet, oh yeah, wet and dry. Oh, that's a good one. Rich and poor. You can be rich with poor ethics, though. Yeah, democracy and totalitarian rule. Sure. What? I mean, most comedians are depressed, though. So. What? What? Ah. I would argue nothing is more opposite than this.
Where's the variant?
I don't care what Rivera says. Until Rivera has a credential to teach 8-push, I don't really give it about his opinion. Let's talk about it. What is religion? All religion is the exact same thing. Belief without seeing. Like you ask people that are religious, like, how do you know God's there? Oh, I just know. Like what? You feel Him. Prove it. Stay with me. Cut the side. Cut the side. How do you know God's there? I just feel it. Cool. Can you see Him? No. Do you have that conversation? Exactly. Can you see Him? No. Can you measure Him? No. No. Religion is the idea of seeing, of belief without seeing. Reasonable? Yes. Right? It's true in Judaism. It's true in Christianity. It's true in Islam. It's true in all these religions. That's the foundational core shared belief. But isn't science the opposite? What do you do in science? You prove things. Right? You have a hypothesis. You test it. You prove it. Yes or no. You see your results. Interesting. How do we know other galaxies exist? We've seen them. How do we know the speed of sound? We've proved it. So science is I don't believe anything until I can prove it. And religion is I believe everything, I don't need proof. Interesting. And I'm not saying Rivera is wrong. I'm saying Rivera is wrong. What I'm saying is historically speaking, I can't think of two more opposite things than proof versus faith. Faith is belief without seeing. So in this case, we have two events, two developments. The Great Awakening, obviously a religious movement. The Enlightenment, obviously a scientific, a logical movement. But then what the hell are they doing in the exact same prompt about colonial identity, if they're two completely opposite things? That's what we'll have for today to kind of figure out. So today, your outline is as follows. We're talking about economic and infrastructural development. Who knows what the word infrastructure means? Kind of, sort of. Well, somebody knows. What does it mean?
Well, I'm not positive, but I feel like isn't it like the way things are like
The way things are connected.
yeah.
So like infrastructure, in this time period, we're talking about like roads, bridges, trails, paths, shipping routes, how we get things from point A to point B. Later in history, we're talking about like highways, cars, trains, infrastructure. Today, we talk often about our technological infrastructure. Cell phone networks, internet, landlines, how we connect things. So we're talking about infrastructural development, we're talking about social and cultural development, we're talking about religious development, and then we'll end with our two big pieces for period 2, then we're done with period 2, the First Great Awakening and the Enlightenment. Some genius in first period did here ask, oh, does that mean there's a second Great Awakening? Yes. Yes. Anytime there's a first, you can always assume there's going to be a second. So, why don't I'm going to open the blind. No, I'll leave the blinds closed, because then people can't see because of the glare. Can you guys see the board okay? So, let's talk first about the economy. And I know we've talked about the economy a lot in this class. Maybe that should be a hint to you that the economy is kind of important. Kind of works, right? If I talk about things a lot, you should probably know them. Good job, Lopez. I'm glad you're paying attention. So we have all these colonial economies. Please, I'll take some volunteers or some shout outs. What are people doing economically, where and why? Talk to me. Guys? Tobacco, where? Good. Tobacco in the Chesapeake. Good. Why don't we do sugar? What else is down here? Sugar, rice, indigo. Good.
Fur on top.
Fur on top. Are they talking about my hair?
North.
Oh, okay, good. We have some fur trade. Shoe? Where's that? Where's shipbuilding? Good. New England and middle. The shipbuilding. Ooh, where's the breadbasket? Middle. Good. So we'll put here. Why don't we just put BB or breadbasket? Good. Good. Anything else? Lumber. Where's that? No. Good. New England. We see some lumber. Good job, guys. I'm in a better mood already. You guys are missing maybe some iron ore. Whaling. Sure. You're in good shape though. So, my question for you, A, is why? Why is their economy built this way? One answer. What is that? The land? Give me a better answer, a better word. Geography, right? So geography is the reason, is the justification or the why. Geography is the reason for like why we're growing this here, why we're growing this here, why we're growing this here, why we're shipbuilding here, why we're fur trading here, why we're lumbering here. Geography. Now my next question is, what is each of these economies? One, we can even go to here if you want. All right, some more cash crops. This is North Carolina, so there's some tobacco. Depends on where you are, some small farms. What is each of these economies closest connected to? What is each of these economies, this tobacco economy, this breadbasket economy, this rice and sugar economy, what is each of them closest linked to? Take a minute and talk about it. See if you can get to where I'm looking for. 1 minute, dive in. What is it closest, the most closely linked to? I know, it's a hard question. But think about it. That's a very good answer I want. Let me stop you guys here. Justin, what do you think?
I think it's because there's a lot of slaves down south.
Well, yeah, good.
Relying on crops.
Sure.
They're planting.
But what is, so you're talking about like all these economies? Are they linked to each other? Are they connected with each other? What are they connected with? Keep going, keep thinking. Dive a little deeper in that. Think head for me, please. Felix, you're a genius. You got to do the quiz.
Yeah.
Everyone eyes on Felix. Look at that guy. Look at him. Don't make that noise at me.
What was the question?
Exactly. What are each, if we look at each of these economies like by themselves, right? This is a little bit of the lumber economy. They're selling lumber, they're buying things. What is the lumber economy most linked to, most closely linked to? What is the breadbasket economy most closely linked to? Brian, what do you think? Oh, don't make that noise either. It's a hard question. It's okay. That's what we're here for. If you had all the answers, I wouldn't need to exist.
Wait, so you're saying what, like, the economy's linked to, or like what they?
I know we know what they produce, right? We made that pretty clear. But then, like, you don't produce anything in a vacuum, right? Like, if I just produce something and I have nothing to do with it, then what do I have? I have waste. So, what is their economy linked most closely to?
Like the people, politics, because like in the north it's more about democracy, so
Okay.
it's more about the right man going and stuff, and in the south they allow slavery.
So it's because the North has democracy that they're having a fur trade.
Yeah. It's like they don't have slavery, so it's
Sure.
plantation.
They do have some small slavery, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I think you're taking a bridge too far. Yes, and then yes. But you're on the right track. Thank you. I'm asking a really hard question. It's okay. It's okay for us to grapple with this. Talk to me.
Isn't it kind of like they profit off each other? Like what they grow there?
They profit off each other.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be a good idea. Talk to me.
I was gonna say they're most like we see a strongest relationship between the type of industries and economies they have and like the regional climate that's like it's connected to. So the reason why you see more of like the cash crop economy in the south is because the climate there and the region there is fertile and it's always moist and you see longer summers, which leads to a bigger.
So they're just growing things for fun because it's a long hot summer?
It better suits the style of it.
It better suits style, so they're just growing it just for shits and giggles. Because it better suits their climate. Like right now it's August, the climate suits me going to the beach. But you don't see me going to the beach because I gotta work. Ah. Michael, what do you think? You guys are overthinking it at this point.
They traded with each other.
They trade with each other?
I mean, no.
I know. You thought you were off the hook after I called on Felix and I came right back to you. Now you're confusing me. I'm gonna make an argument. I'll say if you guys talk to me.
I do. They're all connected to the Atlantic Ocean.
They are all connected to the Atlantic
So it's
Ocean.
like the triangle. I feel like
I see what you're saying. The Atlantic Exchange. The thing, each of these economies, and you guys are like taking it a step, like you guys took it a step too far. Each of these economies is most closely linked to Great Britain.
Oh my God. I said it.
So my point is, I see that. I love when I give you the answer and like half the class is like, oh, I knew it. Well, then why don't you say something? You knew nothing. Come on, Nieto. You can't shut up when you have an answer. You won't say it. Now I say this on purpose because what we don't see is what Yasmin recommended. We don't see, for example, the fur being traded for breadbasket goods. And shit, you see my point? Do they have everything in here for an interconnected economy?
They have everything.
They don't have finished goods, but could they make finished goods?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. They have all the different kinds of. They have the cash crops. They have the food crops. They have the raw materials. They have the labor. They have all of these things that could make a fully integrated national economy. So far, so good? That's what I'm asking for you guys. And instead, each region is not even really communicating with each other. They're directly linked. My fur trade, Great Britain. My cash crop trade, Great Britain. My iron ore, Great Britain. Why? Because the mother country wants profit of it, sure. But what's the policy that enforces all of this? The Navigation Act's good. The Navigation Acts of the 1660s. This is all called mercantilism. Agreed? But in this system, who do the colonists have to trade with? Which country? Good. Does that mean they can't trade with each other? Aren't they all part of Britain? So then what is it? what is it that keeps these colonies more interconnected individually with England than with each other? I don't know. Infrastructure. Yeah. Oop, Google there. Dropped on my head. So industries in the colonies, and that's the thing I want you to take out of that quick discussion. There are only like 3 YouTube notes. Is that geography is developing isolated economies. That they're worried just about their own regional production, and they're not worried about what's happening in the colony to their south. Let me tell you why. Now, there is some manufactured goods being produced in the colonies. For example, rum. Rum is a manufactured good. It doesn't grow organically. You can have a rum plant. Wish you could. They're producing freaking beaver hats, which is awesome. Right? They take a dead beaver and turn it into a hat. That's a manufactured good. They're producing lumber. You take a tree, turn it into usable wood. That's a manufactured goods. And they're producing iron ore. Taking iron that's mined and turning it into a usable metal. Right? So that's a manufactured good. But the most important manufactured good they're producing is ships. And again, that's because of the Navigation Acts. This need to ship all goods on British ships to British ports means New England's like, fine, we'll build ships. The middle colonies are like, fine, we'll build ships. But what's going to end up straining the relationship between the two countries is that American colonists are going to kind of want to trade with who they want to trade with. You guys all right back there? If you got 3 out of 3 in your quiz, I'd have left you alone right now, but you didn't, so you're going to pay attention. Now, the colonists are going to be like, yeah, we have no problem selling our tobacco to England, but what if we want to trade with Spain or France or the Dutch? Why can't we exist that way too? So it's worth getting our heads around this fact that each of these little economies is going to be very, very linked, at least for now, to Great Britain, and they're not going to be linked to each other. Even though we all identified right here, they have everything they need for a nice, strong, successful, independent economy. But mercantilism. Good. Now, one of the big reasons why is problems with transportation. Who's ordered something on Amazon recently? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Cool. Daniel, what'd you order? You ordered some pens because you were too lazy to go to the Dollar Tree. What? They're from Japan. Oh, excuse me. You got that fancy pen. I like it. How long did it take to get there?
They're not here yet.
They're not here yet. When did you order them?
2 weeks ago.
This is a terrible example. Jose, what'd you buy on Amazon?
I bought this water bottle.
You bought that water bottle. Dope. I like that. We got matching water bottles?
No.
See how it is. How long did it take to get there?
2 days.
Two-
Amazon Prime.
2 days. That's wild. Where did
Prime.
I know. Where did it come from? You don't know. It just showed up at your door.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we assume that his water bottle probably came from far away?
Most likely.
Yeah, probably. Because Amazon's wild. They probably put that bad boy on a plane, and they flew it to LAX. And from LAX, they put it on a truck, and they drove it to like a local post office. And that local post office, they put it on a little mail truck, and then his mailman brought it, and then boom, he had his water bottle. See how easy that is? Why? Because there's infrastructure that exists to support this. Now, in the colonies, transportation is incredibly slow. Transportation is incredibly slow. Of course, there's no cars yet, there's no airplanes yet, there's no helicopters yet. So you have to rely on everything to be moved either by boat or over land. Now, is it easy to move things by boat? Yeah. That's one of the reasons why people are in the New World in the first place, because it advances in shipping, it advances in navigation, it advances in sail technology, all these things. But in the colonies, they have very, very poor dirt trails, they have very poor dirt roads. So, to be quite honest with you, it becomes way easier. It becomes way easier to be interconnected with England because it's convenient. In the early 1700s, hear me out for a second, this is crazy. In the early 1700s, it takes way less time, half the time, to get from Massachusetts back to England than it would from Massachusetts to Virginia overland. Back to my map here. It takes half the time to do this, all the way to England, than it does to do this. Because we don't have an advanced system of roads. You're going through the backcountry. You're dealing with Native Americans. You got small, terrible trails. You're trying to lug your stuff. Right? It's just more efficient because we lack such infrastructure and connectivity to be more connected to the British. So it kind of makes sense, right? If it's going to take you way longer to sell something down in Virginia, you're just going to sell it back to England where it's convenient, where you know you can put it on a boat and it'll be back to Great Britain in 2 weeks, and then you're good to go. But think of it this way, right? Like, do you think I would work here if I had to walk to work? No. I live 20 miles away. I can work here because I can drive to work. I can be here in 30 minutes in the morning. However, if I had to walk to work, this would be a way greater distance because it would take me way longer. I would not be here. I'd be working at the high school that's 1,000 yards from my house. Go figure. Now, what this means, though, is that people still need to travel. Right? Nobody just stays in their little bubble. People still moving from Massachusetts to Rhode Island to Pennsylvania to New York. They're going to move slowly. And what's going to happen on these rudimentary infrastructural developments are going to be the development of what's called taverns. Huge part of what I'm going to talk about today. Basically, a fancy word for bar. All right, so much of American culture is built in bars. It's fantastic. Now all of a sudden you guys are excited. So, question for you guys real quick. Who do you associate with? What kind of people do you guys associate with? Quick question. How many of your friends, in your close group of friends, have similar tastes in music? Yeah? 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 How many of your friends share, this is more of an adult thing, but you guys will probably understand because of our context of 2019. How many of your friends share similar political views? Yes, shut up. How many of your friends have similar hobbies or interests? All right, like you guys all like soccer, or you guys all like, yeah? How many of your friends share similar style? Right, you guys all like Nikes, or you guys all. What's my point? What? You associate with like-minded people, especially as adults. As adults, it's worse. Right? Like I had no problem having like conservative friends. I'm an incredibly liberal person, believe it or not. I'm an incredibly liberal person politically. I had no problem having like conservative friends until the last couple of years when things have gotten a little rocky politically. Now it's like, I'm not gonna spend time with you. You're an idiot, right? So again, like most of my friends love football. Most of my friends, it's funny. I bartended for a long time when I was going to grad school to be a teacher, and so many of my bartender friends end up becoming teachers. Right? So a lot of my friends, like from other parts of my life, become a lot of teacher friends. So when I say we associate with like-minded people, it's human nature. That's what we do. But what we see in America is when there's one road between New York and Massachusetts. You with me? One little road. And on that little road, you got to stop to have a couple nights at point A, point B, point C. How many options do you have for hotels? Yeah, you have one option. So what we see in America is this development of these taverns. They're little places of travel. But in it, you're going to have a bunch of different ethnic groups that are staying there. Maybe some British people, maybe some Welsh people, maybe some German people, maybe some Dutch people. You're going to have if you're rich or poor, are you staying in the same place? Yeah, pretty much. If you are Christian or you are Catholic, are you staying in the same place? Yeah. So in these early infrastructure, what's going to happen instead is Americans are going to get pretty good at having conversations with people they don't agree with. They're going to get pretty good at having conversations and finding common ground despite seemingly vast differences in perspective. So early colonial politics are built in the fact that like on these rudimentary trips, people have to kind of commingle. They have to be together. They have to share space if they want to have a hot meal and some beer and have a place to stay that night. So colonial politics. But it's these transportation struggles that make it so difficult to move around, which will keep the colonies dependent on Great Britain, which is important, which is very important. Now, we talked a little bit about this last week, but I want to kind of make sure we're still in good shape. Colonial society and culture, it looks a lot like what we see in Europe, in that in that to be on top, you have to have a lot of land. That's true in Europe, that's true in the colonies. Now, below that, merchants, people that have businesses, small farmers that own some land, craftspeople like iron workers or blacksmiths or people that fix shoes called cobblers. Slaves, of course, at the bottom, and there's regional differences based on where you are. So this is similar, quite similar to what's happening in Europe, England specifically. What's different, though, is this piece. That there is less dependence on who you are or who you are born to. In the colonies, there's much more opportunity. In Europe, quick question for you guys. In Europe, how do people get their hands on land? They don't buy it. They don't steal it. You steal it. How do people get their hands on land in Europe? It's passed down. They inherit it. Who inherits land? Only the firstborn son. Raise your hand, boys. How many of you are the firstborn son? All right, you guys are good. The rest of y'all? How many of you guys have younger siblings? Yeah, screw them. Screw them. No, you got the firstborn son. Alive. So that's called, it's a good term for us to have today, laws of primogeniture. Laws of primogeniture says that only the firstborn son gets land. But in the colonies, there's land enough for everybody. So opportunity becomes different. Now, what this means, this is the kind of connection piece. What this means is that this is more blurred. There's bigger ability to move up and down the social structures, whereas in Europe, for the most part, you're going to die the way you were born. But with this opportunity means that a lot of different people are going to come to the colonies. Who migrates? Yeah, right? So like because this opportunity exists, you're going to attract a bunch of different perspectives, a bunch of different nations, a bunch of different social classes, a bunch of different religions. And that's going to kind of build to our next point. Now, gender roles are very similar to Europe. Men have the authority, men have the power. Men are those that can own land, women cannot. But men also provide the labor. We don't see a lot of women working in colonial America. Why not? Yeah, that's part of it, but also, like, we talked about some numbers. Women are having a ton of kids in the colonies. We're talking like 6, 7, 8 kids per family, right? Like, yeah, you're working full time. You're just raising a full-ass basketball team with backups, right, in your household. So, because women are having so many kids, we don't really see women working in large numbers until we see the birth rate decline. Go figure. Women in the colonies are, of course, submissive to men because it's the 1700s. But women do have a very respected role in the household in terms of educating kids, supporting kids, and women, of course, are limited to no political rights. So women have very, very, very limited rights economically and politically, although socially they do play a moderately respected role. Now, it's also important in this like arts perspective that we are getting so much of our culture and our society from Great Britain. Right? Our buildings look like British buildings. Architecturally speaking, our stuff looks like England. Right? What are some of the big cities that I referenced that are in the colonies? Big cities, big cities, big cities. New York is a big one, yeah. Boston, Philadelphia, good. Pennsylvania is a colony, not a city. Even in the South, Charleston, where all the slaves are coming in, those are all like bigger cities. Each of those cities, like the people want to be England. They want to be England in the New World. So they're building buildings that look like England. Their churches look British. Their stuff looks British. They want to dress British. They want to sound like rich British people. They're just in the colonies. Literature, same idea. We're bringing in British ideas to print in colonial newspapers. We're bringing in British perspectives to put in our colonial essays. We are doing everything we can as colonies to be Great Britain light, like Diet Britain. That's what I call Thursday, it's like Diet Friday, like Friday light. So it's important, like, and the colonists, this is another important piece for your notes. The colonists are incredibly literate. They're incredibly literate. They're reading more. Their reading level is more advanced, right? There's like 10-year-olds in these colonies without any formal schooling that have better lexicons than all y'all. The colonies absorb British print culture to the number 3 of that quiz question at a very enormous rate. Religious sermons, political essays, nonfiction books. Now, one of the key things to note, however, is the first time you see this guy's name, he's pretty important, Benjamin Franklin. He begins publishing out of Philadelphia, where he lives, what he calls Poor Richard's Almanac. Poor Richard's Almanac. And it really is one of the first examples of it's a weekly, starts as a monthly, turns into a weekly newspaper that has like scientific articles and political articles and religious articles and all sorts of perspective. But it's published and written in the colonies for the colonies. So we start seeing like some people in the colonies begin to embrace and harness some elements of like their own culture, their own society, and he's a pioneering member of that class. He plays a big role. We'll talk about him a little bit. Cool. And one of the last pieces before I let you guys read a couple things is education. Now, for the most part, education is limited to wealthy males. But when there's higher education that exists, so high school, college level education, it only exists to train pastors, to study for the ministry, to get people ready to lead a church. So early colonial education is defined by those colleges that are supposed to prepare people to be a pastor. Now, a quick question for you guys. This is an honest question. Who should have more formal education? Who? A pastor or a doctor? Doctor, yes, because that person is, you would think. However, in colonial America, doctors don't have a lot of education, but pastors do. Now, the one exception, and I'm going to have you talk about this in a second, the one exception is New England. New England's the one place where education is pretty standard. Education is provided for by taxes, by the society. New England is where we see the most education. Now take 1 minute and tell me why I shouldn't be surprised. We in this room should not be surprised that New England is where education is the most common. 1 minute, dive in, go for it. Why should we be surprised? Go.
Back in like some of them they have like kind of like tax funded like education.
Why should we be surprised? All right, we stop you guys there. Now, let me hear first, please, from Dahlia. Why shouldn't we be surprised that education, if it exists in New England? Ah, what does religion have to do with it? I don't disagree with you.
Because you said that education was most important for like to make kids into pastors.
Sure. What else might be their religious motivation for education?
Kind of what Dahlia said, they had to be able to read the Bible.
Ah, I gotta be able to read the Bible. So absolutely, right? So we shouldn't be surprised at all that New England has education because they have to read the Bible, they want to have their kids prepared to be pastors and all these things. Yeah, sure. What else? There's a second reason. That's reason 1. Talk to me. This side of the room is lacking. I got volunteers over here. Y'all just over here chilling. You have to. I'm tired of you. Go for it.
The colonies are becoming more diverse, so it's bringing new ideas, and it concerns them because they want to contain the old world, not the new world.
Sure, that's part of it. That's part of it. Diversity is a good part. That's good. Daniel, what else? Good.
See, like a lot of people living more fruitful lives in the sense that they live up to the age of 70. They are having more kids, and their life is more focused on having an actual life than making money.
Sure, having a life involves getting educated as well. What else do we know about New England society? Stansberg. What's the phrase I used a bunch of times? That they used a bunch of times. That we kind of used to explain the justification of education. City on Hill is part of it. What? Greater good or the common good? Good job. Attaboy. Right? Then let's talk about education today. I don't have kids. I don't have children. How about instead of drawing on yourself, you draw on your paper with some words? The attention span of a goldfish. I don't have kids. Does that mean, this is an opinion question that I want your opinion on. Does that mean that I shouldn't pay taxes for education? Why am I paying for public school? My kids don't go there. I don't have school. I don't have kids. Oh, I should pay for your kids to go to school. Oh, hell no. I don't have kids. Mind your own. Pay for your own school. Get out of here. I agree with you, by the way. But I'm just playing devil's advocate. Do you guys see my argument?
Yeah.
However, I disagree with that fundamentally because I think that when our society is better educated, our society is healthier and better and more progressive and more forward-thinking and more stable. What's better for our society? A bunch of really smart people or a bunch of idiots running around?
Smart.
Yeah, so then why are you all a bunch of idiots running around? What's happening? So, but New England's the only place where we see the idea of the general good or the common good. So in New England, any town that has over 50 families, is mandated to have a primary school or an elementary school. That's progress. Who's paying for it? Taxes of the community are paying for it. In any community that has over 100 families, grammar school, which is now called middle school, is required. Which is cool. Now in the middle colonies, it looks a lot like England, in that if you want an education, it's private, you got to pay for it, or you can get it via the church. And in the southern colonies, they don't even know how to spell school. I know, which will be a recurring theme of this class, is the general lack of education and progress in some society. But as you guys identified earlier, right, they're all wrapped up in profit. In a farm-based society, it's hard for people to go to school because they're required to work on the farm. So there's very, very limited education due to the agricultural lifestyle. The only people that are getting educated in the South are the planter elite class that have all the slaves. Like their kids are getting educated because they're not the ones working. And they're being educated by private tutors and the like. Jen, you had a question?
So New England and somewhat the middle colonies had more structure
Yes.
to support education?
Which makes sense because they have more structure for everything in general. And the last piece to talk about is diversity. In many ways, the colonies are a melting pot. And I've brought to my attention that maybe that phrase is a little confusing to you. So I'm going to give you a story. A melting pot. I'm going to make you guys a fifth period A-push salad. You with me? Who likes salad? Yeah, salad's good for you. You should eat more salad. That's good. Josue does not like salad. He'll put down 6 Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, though. Yeah. No, he will. I've seen it happen. It's impressive. So, what should I put in the salad? Throw out some ingredients. Boom. Tomatoes. Ooh, lettuce is a good place to start. Yeah, it's a salad. So, some lettuce, some tomatoes. What else? Radish. Ooh, carrots. Carrots. What else? I heard some cucumber. Yeah, we'll put some cucumber in there. What else? So, we're having lettuce and spinach? Man, we fancy. Ooh, I like it. Kale. We're going real white. We're going real white and put some kale in that bad boy. Good. Oh, maybe some shredded chicken. Sure, let's get some chicken. How about some croutons? You like croutons? Oh, yeah. We're trying to make the salad as unhealthy as possible, so some fried bread. Put that bad boy in there. Cool. You with me so far? Now, I make the salad for everybody. I do. And it's disgusting. You don't eat salad? I'm shocked. Now, I bring the big salad bowl to our A-push on Thursday after our test, and Arielle's like, man, I really hate tomatoes. Do you like tomatoes? Damn it, I nailed it. Boom. Good for me. So, can Arielle still eat the salad and pick out the tomatoes? Yes. Good. Now, instead, I'm going to add a little bit of ranch dressing, put it in a blender, and blend that bad boy and give you a salad smoothie. That sounds terrible. Now, the chicken too, it's all shredded in there together. It's good. Now, can she pick out the tomatoes? No. Because now it's all been blended together. So when I reference the colonies as a melting pot, it's because all these different cultures are, in a sense, coming from their own different places of birth, bringing their ideas, and it's all merging into one general culture. What is that culture? American. Right? Because we're becoming less and less like Britain and more like this version of white people that has some German influence, some Scot influence, some Irish influence, some Dutch influence, some French influence, but yes, also still 85% of your salad is still lettuce. And that's the English influence. So in a salad, if you take a bite, what's most of your bite? It's mostly lettuce. Right? So our culture is mostly British. It's mostly English. But there's these other elements that have been melted in together that you can't then just pull out. Is that a good analogy? Check me out. Now, and we're only getting more diverse, and our population is growing substantially because there is so much migration, because of that opportunity reference, and there is a very high birth rate, people having a lot of kids. Why, question for you, take 1 minute to talk to your partner, why is this melting pot ideology even possible? Why is it possible for all these cultures to kind of blend together? 1 minute, go for it. Go. Go. Why? 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 What's up?
It's not Irish words, it has a hard something where they don't like
What's up?
where they don't like so technically you're talking
Sure.
But their ideas were different. Wait.
What's up? All right, we'll stop you guys there. Why? Question for you. Why does this melting pot idea even work?
The fact that people can come over.
Sure. There's like a shared understanding they all came over. Yeah, that's fair. What else? What? Sure, there's toleration. Absolutely, that's a huge part of it. Talk to me. You're right, and you're right.
I was thinking that since there's no larger power established, that anyone can kind of just come and kind of follow under.
That's a good point. There's no like huge controlling, governing body that's telling them what to do. Yeah, that's fair. What else? What do they all have in common? They're all white. So you can't. This is. I mean, it's true for many cultures, right? Like I can't look at you and tell you what country you came from. Agreed? You can't look at me and tell me what country I came from. No? You're not wrong. Yeah, because white people, by now in America, white people are all mutts. We're all mixes. Right? Like if I haven't done my little DNA thing, right? It's weird to me. I'll probably be like 40% Irish, 25%, I don't know, British, 20% German, 15% something else, 5% Native American, 2% African, right? Like white people are just a mix of everything. And it's because of this, right? You can't look at a white person and be like, oh yeah, that guy's a British dude. Or that guy's German. I mean, you can. German. You see my point though? Now, we're a melting pot of immigration until, I don't say this because later in the school year, we'll talk about a different perspective when other groups start coming that don't look like everybody else. And then all of a sudden it doesn't all blend in nicely because, oh my God, that guy's Chinese, I can tell. How can you tell? Because he looks Chinese. Right? Or that guy is Mexican. Right? Nobody would look at me and be like, oh yeah, Winchell's Mexican. You might think that by the end of the year, but it is in fact not true. I'm just a white person. Just a very multicultural white person. So, while I say this, it's important that everything's blending together nicely because everybody at the end of the day is still white. All right, so turn your page, please. Turn your page, I have two, in my opinion, really good texts. One's going to talk about, real quick, one's talking about the Great Awakening, one's talking about the Enlightenment. One from Paul Johnson in his book from 1997, another from David Goldfield in his book from 2005. Now what you're going to do is you're going to dive into both of them side by side. They're both really good texts to kind of get your mind around what's happening in the Great Awakening and what's happening in the Enlightenment. And you're going to just tell me, how do they differ in their views on the way colonists are absorbing culture? What's changing for the colonists, all right? So take 6 on your own, please. No, hold on. Take 6 to read, to respond, and I'll let you dive in as a class. Let's see what we got. these two texts. The first one's really good in terms of helping you get your mind around why the Great Awakening matters. That's all I was saying. What? No. It's just really good for principle of Bible. Two or so minutes left. Any response from everybody? How do these two perspectives differ on the way in which culture, new ideas are being spread into the colony? First text is one of the best things to read this year. All the information is right there in that text for you guys. 40 seconds. All right. So focusing specifically on the first one, because that's the one we're going to deal with first. Like, what is it that Johnson argues about the Great Awakening? What does it do for the colonies? How does that impact colonial development? Take two, talk to your people, have a good, productive, enriching conversation, and we'll dive in as a class. 2 minutes. Go. Dive in, dive in, dive in. Yeah? How? Why? That's what he says. What does he say?
What was the reason?
You can sit back and do the whole rest of your afternoon. And the next 45 minutes, you're mine. Tell me about this. Come on, fifth period. You guys are dropping the ball today. You tell me you get the answers. I know. You told him. These people tell themselves. What about it?
But on the colonies, these are different. They're both in the
How's that feel? Good up? There you go. Why?
We're united.
They're not even there. They're just kind of diving in on like what changes and how. Why? It's working. This way. Next way. Hit next. Escape it and then. All right. So this is probably the like I know a lot of you. I heard from a lot of you guys. Oh, if you know about the Enlightenment or the Great Awakening equation, it was so boring. I'm like, yes, it is. It can be very boring. But this little chunk is the best description of why it matters that I could find on planet Earth. So let's talk about it. According to Johnson, what is the impact of the Great Awakening? What is the impact of the Great Awakening? Talk to me, please, Montan. He's got back on. Mungia, talk to me.
Well, when partner was saying, he was talking about trade,
Okay.
how it
Guys, like, I know it's the end of the day, I know it's Monday, but these are the texts that are like allowing you to really dive into these things that'll make your life easier on Thursday and really the rest of the year. So I'm not asking much. I'm asking you to like dive into a text, figure out what the argument is, and then be willing to talk about it. Nunez, talk to me. According to Johnson, what is the impact of the Great Awakening?
That sound like colonies or that they're like one together. So they realized like they became one together.
Good, good. It showed the colonists what they have in common. Out of what? Good work, good work. That's not asking for much. Lopez, what else?
First text.
Yes.
It was saying that people were listening to these new ideas and like they changed separateness, like
Okay.
they broke down walls and they came
Ah,
together.
they broke down walls, right? They're breaking down boundaries. Not just geographic boundaries, but also like societal boundaries. And they're realizing that, oh, like maybe we have more in common with ourselves than we have in common with Great Britain. Daniel, Ad, your hand was up.
Oh, I was gonna say that it kind of created and kind of fostered what was the American identity and this like kind of collectiveness, and that they are together despite these kind of religious differences, and even then they created religious similarities, so they found that connection with each other.
The way I put it is it's the first shared experience for the colonies as a whole. For the colonies, not like a colony, right? Like Virginia went through Bacon's Rebellion and they switched over to slavery. That's an experience for Virginia. The First Great Awakening is the first thing that is a shared experience where I can say this happens to the colonies as a unit. And it shows them, as it says, right, that there's a political dimension and a geographic dimension, and it makes these boundaries important, but reminds us that maybe we have a lot more in common than we thought we did. Now, according to this text, like, who does the Great Awakening matter to in the colonies? Kind of everybody, right? According to the text on the right, who does the Enlightenment matter to? Yeah, to the rich. The people that have enough time on their hands to like sit and read and discuss and think about politics and read new ideas. What we see though is that, and maybe this is one of the reasons why the Great Awakening is so important, is because it is the tearing down of boundaries that matters to everybody. Now let's talk about the Great Awakening. Now, as you guys know, the colonies are a very diverse religious place. What's our most diverse religious place in the colonies? Pennsylvania, because of those Quaker principles. So this visitor, this dude, he's a visitor to Pennsylvania in 1750. He says, we find there, in Pennsylvania, Lutherans, Reformed, Catholics, Quakers, Mennonists, Anabaptists, herd hunters, Moravian Brethren, Pietists, Seventh-day Adventists, Baptists, Dunkers, Presbyterians, all these different perspectives on God all in one place. And it's in this diverse context that the Great Awakening takes place. So let's talk about what the Great Awakening is and why does it matter. There's two themes or two ideas that I want you to know. The first is evangelism. The second is revivalism. I'll explain both to you. Now, evangelism is quite simply the desire to spread your religion to somebody else. The desire to spread your religion to somebody else. For example, yesterday morning, my wife's dad was over at my house, and we were working on some new shelves in my kitchen. And I have literally in my left hand a drill, in my right hand a screwdriver, and somebody knocks on the door. I'm like, what the hell's going on right now? My dog's barking. It's Sunday morning at like 9 a.m. I'm like, oh. Nobody ever knocks on my door either. People just come in my house. Nobody knocks. So I'm like, my hands are full. My father-in-law's like holding a shelf up on the wall waiting for me to finish drilling. I go, and it's two dudes who are like, oh, excuse me, sir, do you have a minute to talk about some good news? Like, first of all, no, I don't. Second of all, like, I have a drill and a hammer, a screwdriver, and I'm obviously busy with something. And third of all, I don't know you. So I'm really excited you have good news, but I don't care. That's cool, right? Do you have a new grandchild? No? Like you had a good breakfast? What's the good news? And I was like, hey man, I'm kind of got my hands full right now. My father-in-law's in there, we're working on a project. He's like, cool, well, can you just have a couple quick minutes? I want to share some thoughts from the scriptures. I was like, bro. I have a screwdriver and a drill in my hand. This is obviously not the time. Right? And I'm like, I appreciate your time, sir, but like, unless like you need me to come put a fire out in your house up the street or something, like, not the time. That's evangelism, right? Trying to actively go and spread your religion to other people. I said, you have a lovely day. I'm a little busy right now. Thank you. I should just let the dog take care of it. I need to get sleep. So that's evangelism, though. Right? The idea of actively trying to spread the good word. He had good news. I don't know what his good news was. I don't have time for that. But the second piece is very important for the First Great Awakening. And it's revivalism. To get people excited about religion again. To get people passionate about religion again. To get people like actively engaging in the religious process. Appealing to people's emotions, not their intellect. Question for you guys. This is an honest question. I won't tell your parents. Hi, Mars. Honest question. How many of you guys got to church in your life? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Yeah, all right, cool. How many of you gone to church and been sitting there at like 10 a.m. on a Sunday? Like, man, this is the boringest shit I've ever done in my entire life. Yeah. You all go to the wrong churches. You need to go to a First Great Awakening church where people get all hyped and crazy. So, but that's the idea, is we should make religion more about people's emotions, more about appealing to them. Brian, can you turn off both lights real quick? And just stay the light switch really quick? And this is my example. Look at this awesome picture. Right? We got freaking George Whitfield out here. Got his hands up. Living the dream. Talk to me, a couple quick observations. What do you see in the picture and why? What stands out to you? What? Yeah, they're not just sitting there in a pew like, oh my God, can I just go home and take a nap? Yeah, they're into it, right? They're excited. Good. What else? What? They're praying? Well, yeah, that's what people do in church. That's not new. Talk to me. there's the diversity in the people. We got a poor dude over here who's like toasting his beer, like, yeah, what up, man? Jesus, let's go. We got rich people, poor people, nice clothes, women, children, dogs. Yeah, cool. I agree. So there's two, right? So we got diversity and we got people excited. What else? What else do you notice? They're outside. Are they in a church?
No.
How do you know they're having church then?
The tree.
The tree, yes. Good. Lights back on, Brian. You sit down. Thanks, dude. I'm going to clap for Brian. He did good on the lights. Big steps, baby. Big steps. So, how much of this is different? All of it. All right, this is the original Coachella over here. We got Kanye West, right? Saying "Praise Me," which is what Kanye West would say. Maybe it's the Tupac hologram. I don't know. So, moral of the story, though, like it's all this new stuff that is trying to both evangelize and revive. Now, who is this going to piss off? They're all Christians. Who's this going to piss off? Who is this going to piss off in society? What's that? Maybe, but rich people are out there. The established traditional churches. The established traditional churches. Because now we're giving people more options. We're giving people choices in how they want to pursue their Jesus. So we're going to have conflict between what's called old lights and new lights. Old lights are the old way of doing things that like to appeal to traditional church versus new lights that are into doing things this new, exciting way. So some of the outcomes that I need you to be aware of is, number one, we see a decline in church membership for the old school style churches, the traditional style churches, the Congregationalists who are like the Puritans, the Quakers, the Anglican church. We see a decline in these old traditional ways of going to church, but an increase in new types, new denominations, new kinds of Christianity. Presbyterians, Baptists, Methodists. These are, all of a sudden, denominations of Christians that are just American. That's huge. So we're getting rid of some of the old, like, English-style religions. There's still Christianity, but different types of Christianity, and there's new, more American-specific denominations of Christianity. With the First Great Awakening, we got way more people back in church, but they're back in church in new denominations, new ways of looking at Christianity. Second, we have a huge increase in educational institutions, a huge increase in college. Fun fact, you guys would probably never know this, most of the Ivy League schools, the best schools in America, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Dartmouth, these crazy hard schools to get into. They were originally created during the First Great Awakening to train preachers. Yeah, go figure. So all these now that are considered like America's best schools are created because of the First Great Awakening to train new pastors. We do, because the First Great Awakening, though, see an increase in acceptance of African Americans and Native Americans, allowing African Americans and natives into church environments, and women. Women are given the right to vote in church, not in politics, but in church, and women are given the right to speak in church. What a concept. So we see in these denominations specifically, Presbyterians, Baptists, and Methodists, even to this day, more women that are in the ministry because they're allowed to based on their very creation. Interesting. So what have we just done with religion? I'm going to draw a diagram. What have we given people? What have we given people? Flexibility, sure. What else? Maybe freedom, not necessarily. What else? Opportunity to do what? Leave it on Michael, because Michael's on the right track. You're right. You're right there. Take a minute to talk to your partner. What have we done for people in their relationship with God? 1 minute, talk it out. Go for it. Better what? Their relationship with God? As opposed to having to go through what? As opposed to having to go through what?
You have to be like
But you just said the right thing.
you have to be like dedicated.
Their relationship with God, as opposed to having to go through part of it. You're right there. Good. What did you go? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I heard a couple really good things. Those dying in the back. Coughing yourself to death. Norio, talk to me.
Oh, have some better relationship with God rather than like people up there in higher church telling them what a good relationship with God is. You know?
There it is. So it allows them to have their own relationship with God as opposed to, in her words, having the higher ups in the church tell them how to have a relationship with God. Daniel, your hands up, speak to me.
I was like one point that I had even noted in the homework was
Louder.
that the one point that I had noted was that the Great Awakening, the first Great Awakening, made religion and the church more accessible to all people in the colonies.
Ooh, accessibility is a big one. Let me add that up. Accessibility allows people to practice the same Christianity, but in their flavor. How many of you guys ever gone to get ice cream before? Right? What would you do if you went to an ice cream place and there was one flavor? There's a whole chain of ice cream stores called 31 flavors because there's a lot of flavors. That's their whole mantra. We have a lot of flavors. Come have our ice cream. So that way, Shmuel, what's your favorite ice cream?
Cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. I like that. Montan, favorite ice cream? Chocolate chip cookie dough. All right, I see.
DeAndre just popped her head in to say that she was the employee of B1 when she worked at that 31.
Oh yeah, Miss DeAndre used to work at 31 Flavors. So now we're talking. Baskin Robbins. But there it is. So if you want ice cream advice, talk to her. Arielle, favorite ice cream flavor? Cookie. Oh, so now we're at a cookies and cream store. We got two patrons. Kevin Scott. Just straight up chocolate, keeping it real. I like that. Gilberto, favorite ice cream? Lime. Stansbury. Cookies and cream ain't either. No. I see Isis shaking her head. Isis, talk to me. Strawberry. I see that. My point is, to Daniel's fantastic point that builds off Yasmin, is that the First Great Awakening offers accessibility. And when religion is more accessible, and people are able to have their own, because you picked the perfect words, Yasmin, people can pursue their own relationship with God. We've cut out the middleman of the established churches. We've cut out this middleman and encouraged people to have their own relationship with Christ. Now there's two preachers that you have to know, Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield. Lucky for you, I have a very short text selection of their two most famous sermons. And you're going to see they're very different. They're very, very different, side by side. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if you can answer this, but how is it started?
Louder.
I'm not sure if you're going to answer this, but I was kind of confused how the First Great Awakening started.
I'll circle back to that afterwards. So I have two side by side. Jonathan Edwards is titled Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. George Whitefield is titled Marks of a True Conversion. I'm going to have you dive into both texts side by side. And I don't want you to necessarily compare them, but I want you to tell me what elements of the Great Awakening do we see in both texts? How do they both reflect the Great Awakening ideals? And how are their ideas different but still under the umbrella of the First Great Awakening? Your question's there on the paper. I'm going to give you 6 to read it, annotate it, and respond to the question, and identify where we see Great Awakening ideals. We'll talk about it as a class, and then we'll have a discussion. 6 minutes. Go. My favorite. It's the ocean day. It's time. Yes, you can. No, you cannot. 3 minutes. I need both texts read. I need your responses. I need to figure out where these elements of the Great Awakening need to be present in both these two texts. School's done in 23 minutes. You gotta go fast. It's crazy how that happens.
I want to hear him say this.
Good line. Good piece. What? You okay? Yeah. This is a little more aggressive. What is his big Great Awakening? Show of figures, how much more time do we need on the two texts? 2 minutes works? What we got? Go, dive back in. Where do we see Great Awakening ideals? both end up having like very similar things to that question. All right, sounds like you're done. So I'm going to give you 2 with your partner to dive in on that question, right? Like what Great Awakening ideals do we see present in these 2 texts side by side? And then we'll kind of talk about it as a class, because I think they're both really important and kind of hilarious and ridiculous. 2 minutes, dive in, go for it. Go for it, dive in.
Do you feel the great hell burning?
You're going to go to hell.
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
The damnation.
So aggressive, right? Michael, put your life together. Edwards? Wow. All right, let me stop you guys there. Good conversation. Thank you. Let's talk about Edwards. Because they both have different perspectives on God, but they're both kind of giving us what we're looking for Great Awakening idea-wise. There is the dreadful pit of the glowing flames of the wrath of God. There is hell's wide, gaping mouth open. And you have nothing to stand on and nothing to hold on to. There is nothing between you and hell but the air. It is only the power and mere pleasure of God that holds you up. Talking about Edwards' version of God. Rubalcaba.
It's kind of like if you mess up, you just let it out. Like there's kind of no way out of it. But what I also took away from it was kind of like you have a direct relationship with God rather than like going through it with like the church and stuff. It's just kind of like if you mess up, you just go to hell. Like you know you're going to hell because of that relationship with God.
Yeah, literally not just you're going to hell. Like God is dangling you over the pit of hell right freaking now. Yeah, he's like, how you saw? I'll save it for the day. Let's see how tomorrow's mood is. Yes. Hold for a second. But I want to point out Rubalcaba's perspective on the fact that who has the ownership here? She says you. It's not your church. It's not your behavior in church. It's not how often you go to church. It is your life, your actions, your decisions, your perspectives. That's the only thing that can save you from hell. Good point. Good point. Who wants to build? Response to that. Dan, your hand was up. Which way you want to build? What's up? Sinners in the hands of an angry God? Ooh. It's a good one. It is a good one, I agree. Now, talk about the next one. Whitfield's. What is Whitfield's perspective on God? Because there's going to be some commonality, but also some slight differences. I love your handout. Thank you. Talk to me.
I just wrote that Whitfield states that you should speak with God of your troubles.
Sure. Keep going.
Basically that you could speak with him like with your problems.
Okay. So in Whitfield's version of God, what does that mean for our questions about the First Great Awakening, though? How does that better help us understand the way these dynamics work?
Like Yasmin said, you have control of that.
Run that back, run that point right back for us, please.
Like Yasmin said, you have control of the situation.
Interesting. So like Yasmin said, you have control. It's your relationship with God. It is you that's steering the ship, so to speak, not your church. Well done. Daniel, yes, sir. Thank you for the handout.
To build up to your point.
Please build.
I think that it also, both of them kind of have the same notion that that connection with God is more tangible than it ever was. So you kind of have you can actually connect with Him, and everybody resonates with each other more because they're all trying to connect to God.
It's a good word, tangible. I like that. Now, in one word, what is Edward's version of God? How would you describe Edward's version of God in one word? I want to hear some words. How would you, if this was the God you were going to church and hearing about, how would you describe this God?
Harsh.
Harsh. Good. What else?
Supercilious.
What?
Supercilious.
Threatening. I like that. What else? Cruel. I don't disagree. Intimidating. Yeah. Vengeful. Now, compare that, please, to Whitfield's version of God. Dahlia, how would you describe Whitfield's version of God?
Benevolent.
You're not Dahlia.
That was
Nice. What? Nicer than the one? I want a better word than nice, though. Would you write nice in an eight-push essay? Okay. If no, then no, that's not what I want.
Understanding.
Ooh, better word. Understanding. How else would you describe him? Yes. Fatherly. Yeah. Fatherly, understanding, benevolent. Now I can give you credit for saying no, even though you weren't Dahlia. Yes. So it's important that both of these texts have in common this idea of, to Rubalcaba's point, Aracelli's point, that it's on you, it's your relationship with God, but they have a slightly different perspective about how God interacts with you. Now I want to put some things on the board to really lock in where we are and where we're going. What this does is it questions, yes, say it louder for me.
Authority.
Good. Established authority. What this does is it questions established authority. In this case, church authority. And it urges people to push for individualism, to make their own decisions. This is between you and God. Either you fix it, or you go to hell is one perspective, or when you're having problems, talk to God. Does it say you have to go to church to talk to God? No. Yeah, right? Like we saw these dudes out here in the freaking wilderness getting wild with Jesus, this dog, and this guy over here with his cut off shirt. Good. Good. Now we're going to pivot real quick and talk Enlightenment. So turn your page, please. We're going to pivot real quick and close up class with the Enlightenment today. There's only 11 minutes left, so we've got to finish strong. Now, like I told you earlier, in my opinion, there's very few things in life that are more opposite than science and established religion. So now let's talk science. Now the Enlightenment is significant, much more so in world history, for starts. And then I'm going to circle back to it in period 3 when we talk about declaring independence and natural rights and all that fun stuff. But it's important because it kind of happens in tandem. It kind of happens concurrently with the Great Awakening, so I'm going to preview it now, plant some seeds, we're going to water those seeds, and I'll circle back to see how those seeds are growing next unit, okay? So it is described as a time of intellectual ferment, of logic, reason, science, which on its surface would sound categorically different than what we just talked about with the Great Awakening. Monumentally important to this conversation is the way that it, just like the Enlightenment, just like the Great Awakening, is part of this transatlantic exchanges. It's more ideas that are coming from Europe. So as you're asked in the near future, hint, hint, about the impact of the transatlantic exchanges, I want to see more than just cash crops, more than just mercantilism, more than just slaves and the triangle trade. Because as I've emphasized to you guys literally since the second day of school, anytime you have trade and exchange, you're also bringing people, you're bringing ideas, you're bringing culture, you're bringing the press. And the Enlightenment is the logical outcropping of that exchange. We're not just trading tobacco for manufactured goods, we're trading ideas, we're trading culture. And it is an emphasis on science and reason, on solving our problems logically, on looking for proof instead of relying on what God says. Now, I'm going to ask for all of your eyes up here for a second. because I'm going to have you go way back in time to Mr. Maltez's class. I know it's not something anybody wants to do. I apologize. However, I know flashbacks. All right? Are they good flashbacks? All right. Talk to me about divine rights. Talking about divine rights. Talk to me about divine rights, please. Let me hear from Leslie. According to divine rights, who has power and where does that power come from? What? I see a hand. Talk to me. Help her out. I'll come back to you, so make sure you're ready for me.
Wasn't it that like high people supposedly claim that like deities would like talk to them and then they would tell that to like the common people?
Oh, all right. So God talks to who? Yeah, right. The king. That works. Nicely done. The king, the queen, the emperor. Right. Depends on who it is. So far, so good. This sounds familiar? Yes.
Kind of like it's a way that it forces your power in a way, like the fact that God.
I'm gonna wait because I got 3 people in the back that aren't really paying attention. I'd like them to hear what you have to say. Go for it.
It kind of like enforces the power because it shows that God's saying that like they have the right to have this power.
Ah, so God gives them that power, and then they use that power over the people. Nicely done. Good call. Question for you guys: if you prescribe to this perspective that God put the king in charge and the king told you what to do, can you question the king?
No.
No. Why not? Because you're questioning God. Bless you. Speaking of questioning God, you feel better back there? It's a good sneeze. I'm a little jealous. So, under this perspective, the power waterfalls downward. God gives the power goes to the king, and the king uses that power over the people. Now, we'll talk about what this means later for American politics. But the thing I want you guys to understand is that Enlightenment philosophy says that there is no divine right, and largely speaking, God has no influence on politics. And instead, at the very top of things are what we call natural rights. This is a throwback quiz, I know. Natural rights. Talk about natural rights, please. Alexia, what are they? You got it. It was. You got somebody who's willing to help you. You want to ask Justin for help? I know. Bold. He just finished sneezing, so he's good to go. Justin, talk to us. What are they?
There were rights that you have once you were born.
Sure. What are they?
Freedom, liberty,
Here. Huh?
property,
Yes, and?
right?
You're close. Who wants to help him out? Go for it. Not pursuit of happiness. That's a more of an American thing. We'll talk about that next week, though. Life. Liberty. And then what's your third one? Property. Good. Good. Bear with me. I know you had it. You're ready to talk about it. And it's the government's job to protect those rights. That we give the government the power. I don't care. We give the government the power, and the government protects those rights for us, and now we have the authority to question the government. And again, we'll dive more into this a little later, but it's important we highlight it as kind of a concurrent event with the Great Awakening. Now with this, we kind of flip our entire view of power. Dahlia, according to this philosophy, who has the power in society? Is it the government or is it the people? The people. Yeah, they give, good job, they give the government their power to protect those rights. Now, the 4 things that I'm going to introduce now and circle back to next week are as follows. Natural rights, we already talked about it. Natural rights. That's your first influence. How does the Enlightenment influence going about liberty? This belief in natural rights. Good, good. 0 right there. Life, liberty, property. Second is separation of powers. That we shouldn't give all of our power and influence to one group. We shouldn't give all of one person the ability to make all the decisions. So that's our second piece of influence. That if we're going to give power, if this is what we're doing, individuals are giving the government power, we shouldn't give all the power to one person or one group. Let's spread that out. Third is freedom of thought and expression. Justin was hinting at that when he talked about the press or speech. Sure, the people should be able to criticize the government if appropriate. And the fourth piece is religious freedom. That the government should have no business telling us how to practice our God, how to practice our religion, how to practice our faith. Now these four core ideas I'm going to circle back to with our pre-Revolutionary War American founding ideals. So it's important more so in the period 3 conversation than the 2. But I needed to put it here today because it kind of happens concurrently with the Great Awakening. So quick question. I'm going to give you 1 minute to talk about it. How is this similar to the Great Awakening? This political logic science movement that has nothing to do with God or religion, how is this similar to the Great Awakening? So why might we be linking these things for today? I'm going to give you a minute to talk about it, and then I'll give you the last 2 to respond to your question of the day, and then we're going to call it a day. 1 minute, dive in. Go for it. No, somebody else does though.
Yeah, but I didn't know that.
You'll be on my roster eventually.
They've been marking me out because I went to the office. They've been marking me absent for 6 periods. So they said I have to check in with the office and then.
They didn't make that clear. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Esther, talk to me. What do they have in common, Miss Portillo? I haven't heard from you in a little bit. Ooh, tell me more about individualism. That's what I'm looking for. Talk to me.
Like in the Great Awakening, you had like, you were able to like, God.
And what does the Enlightenment do?
Enlightenment, you have like your own natural life, which is
Good. Well done. Talk to me.
They both of them, I think, giving power back to the people.
Allowed to have people make their own decision, power back to people. Good. Is it fair to say that both of them allow people to question established authority? Yes. Interesting. Put that in your own words, on your prompt response in the very back on your way out. How much do these 2 movements impact colonial development? I need it done before you walk out the door. But yeah. Good. Good. All right, before you move, I need your chapter 5 4 is already in the grade book. You guys did a phenomenal job today. Wednesday we'll hit the LEQ. Thursday's your first test. Yeah. And I just passed out a really good short review reading. It's your Thursday. No, you guys keep your notes. Keep your notes. I see you reading it yesterday. Just give me your shot. You're referencing your own
Sir,
class.
you don't have an A in the class. I'll see you.
Luis is not getting no A in the test.
What?
Luis is not getting it. He's not getting it.
As long as I pass the
As long as he passes
If you get an A in the class,
What are you passing? What are you going to hit?
he's not getting it. This
go.
If he passes
English,
English,
I'll give you.
If he passes the push test, he's going to pass the push test. I got George Tapia,
You got Alex Razo.
Alex Serrazo, and
And
Chris
Chris
Ibarra. I got Luis Bernal to get a 5. I can get him to pass the test.
no, but you don't know this guy. You
Yeah, I
know
do.
him in the locker room. Like, that is.
What is that I'm going to do with
What the?
Right,
That's why. That's why.
Hey,
His
hey.
mind is on different things. His mind is not on.
Close the blind. So I'm saying it's right.
Yes,
Yeah,
he probably is
your
good.
mind is on school. You know where your mind is.
Basketball.
Okay, I'll say this. He's a better basketball than he is.
Bro,
He is maybe just fine in my class.
bro, in the game.
Yeah, it was
Alex
right.
Serrazo.
Dude, this guy's good. That guy's good.
Yeah, he's
He's
good.
good in class.
He's doing that.
In the locker room, you talk about
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. It's not the education.
Right. Hey, Jose, close the blind. It's too bright.
So, what's that?
And go.
Sorry for the